very, very good evening. Thank you for joining us from wherever you're watching us in Kenya, East Africa, and across the amazing African continent. Welcome to our program, The Insight, whereby we are going to go down deeper to the issues pertaining the Mau Patriotism in Kenya. And in the studio this evening, I have my guests who are going to discuss these matters deeply and very sharply to help us understand who are the Mau, what was their mission, their goal, and what they intended to capture in this country. And therefore, I want to introduce the panel this evening, and I'll start from my far end. Just give an introduction, your name, tell us who you are, and even your interest in this given panel. Welcome.
Thank you so much. For this time, I'm called Victor Ogutu, one of the scholars.
Thank you, welcome.
My name is Mogoro Akimani, a businessman in Nairobi with an interest in this subject matter.
Thank you.
Mimi ni Captain Getheka Kikonyo, member wa Mau Veteran, National Coordinator katika muungano wa wapiganiaji uhuru Kenya.
Thank you, welcome.
I'm Pius Njogu. I'm the Secretary General of Mau War Veteran. I have an office.
Yes.
And my father and my mother was incarcerated during the Mau, and my father was fighting in Nyeri forest.
Thank you, welcome.
My name is Wabogowagebeiga. I am the Secretary General of Mau Governing Council of Kenya, an umbrella body organization. As for intent, my father was a Mau. He was in the bush. He was injured in the bush. He was a victim, and he recuperated, but he never died because of the bullet.
Yes.
He never succumbed at that time. He lived to see us achieve uhuru. I am the product of the Mau, a true son of Githaiga wa Kongo, popularly known then by that time, Githai Honoki. Honoki means somebody who was saved, but
yeah.
he saved himself from, God saved him from the bullet.
Thank you.
He never died there.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, the panel. My name is Mr. Evans Charles Okumu, and I'm the caretaker of the Tomboya National Monument and the monument of Didan Kimathi Washiri. And apart from that, I'm still the village elder of Starehe Education and opinion leader of Starehe. Thank you.
Thank you, our viewers. Welcome to our discussion. Remember that you're going to have a very heated discussion here about the Mau movement and about all they wanted to achieve. And my guest to welcome now to our panel here. And first and foremost, I would like to understand what it meant, the word Mau. The meaning of that word, we normally say Mau, but what does it mean? And I'll start with our elder here, who is a veteran of the Mau movement. What does it mean to be called a Mau?
Well, Mau has a lot of connotations. One of the connotation was Mzungu aondoke, Mwafrika apate uhuru.
Generally, it means it was a movement of liberating our land from the British movement.
Those were the ideals.
Okay.
That's the ideals they were fighting for.
Yes.
So that they get independent and land back, because it was already alienated by the White Highlands, as White Highlands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, may I understand who were the people who formed the Mau movement? My brother, who were the people who formed the Mau movement?
Initially, first people who formed the Mau movement and who thought about the Mau movement,
yes.
First was the Kikuyu Central Association.
Yes.
When the Kikuyu Central Association was coming up on a way on how to overcome our challenges, the idea of Mau came out of slavishhood.
Yes.
That was within the framework of the colonial masters of Kenya.
Yes.
They were sourcing for cheap labor, And even in Europe, it was well known, even those army generals who are coming from the war, the First and Second World War, in Africa, it was well known that they would be well catered for as compensation to them now. Yes. The other issue arose is that in Africa, Kenya, there was a documentary evidence from the colonial government when they come up with the issues of Imperial British East Africa. It was a trading company, so part of it was investments in Africa. And those who are now to come and invest in Africa, they were promised free land. They were promised cheap labor. They were promised a land of plenty. They were promised that Kenya was a paradise. Okay. One reason that it was a paradise is because it was within the tropic, and the climate. When you want the best climate, when you want to the coldest place, coldest weather, yes, that was called hottest weather, moderate weather. Kenya was a land of plenty. It was a paradise. And during and in Europe, remember they have got also problem with the climate. They got problems with that climate. So Africa was the best place.
Thank you. Now you're saying that they measured on central Kenya because of the tropicals of and the terrains of the land. First why they measured in central Kenya or central Kenya is because of cheap labor and vibrant about labor. Okay. Remember, they had to source a tribe which was pro-agriculture, and the tribe which was most pro-agriculture was that Kikuyu tribe. So also that to get cheap labor, even that did not require training. It was just to adapt, because on adaptation it was very simple, it was very easy. It didn't require training. It's only that other areas that they were focusing first, or to them first, was on catch crops. Thank you. Now, may I understand also from our elderly dad here, what was the major mission? Why was that association formed? Why was it formed? Why was the Kikuyu Central Association formed? There were goals, ambitions. What were they after achieving as they were forming the Kikuyu Central Association or the Mau Mau movement?
Kulingana na vile mambo iko sasa hii, yes, sisi tulianza mambo ya kupigania uhuru. Hiyo sio ndio tunajua tu peke yake, yes, kwa sababu serikali ya Uingereza ilikuja hapa miaka mingi iliyopita, ikafanya sisi kuwa watu ya mkono yao na wakatutumia vibaya na kunyang'anya mashamba yetu ya Mwafrika, sio ya Kikuyu, mashamba ya Mwafrika katika Kenya. Kwa hivyo tukasema lazima mzungu aondoke Kenya, atupatie uhuru wetu kama tulikokuwa naye kabla yeye hajakuja, kwa sababu sisi tulikuwa najitawala kama Waafrika. Kwa hivyo tukaonelea ya kwamba afadhali tuondoke na tupambane na Mwingereza mpaka tumung'oe pamoja na mizizi yake. Kwa hivyo tukatengeneza vita ya kupigana na Mwingereza.
Kwa hivyo mlitaka kumuondoa Mwingereza katika nchi ya Kenya ili muweze kupata uhuru kama Waafrika na Wakenya.
Ndio, kwa sababu Mwafrika ni na nchi yao. Sisi hatukupewa nchi hii, ni Mungu tu alitupatia, yeah, hii nchi yetu ya Kenya, sio mzungu. Kwa hivyo anataka alitunyang'anya mashamba, akatufanya colonize, na sisi tukasema lazima aondoke, na aondoke kabisa, tunjitawale, tuwe tukichagua na tukikaa tukijitawala sisi wenyewe kama Waafrika wa Kenya.
Asante, tutarejelea swali hilo na tuweze kujua, je, tuliweza kupata uhuru kama Wakenya, lakini tutaangalia baadaye. Ndugu yangu,
I think when he said about why they went to the forest,
yes,
we have to appreciate that much as we are talking about the name of Mau, we have to look at where did the resistance come from, and
yes,
where the resistance.
Yes.
First of all, the Muzungu this thing did not start in 1900. It was prior.
Much earlier.
Much earlier.
Yes. Actually, from 1896.
Yes.
With the Hingers. You remember?
1886.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's when they started doing the railway from Mombasa to Kisumu.
1896.
96. But
Yes.
before then, we had the Captain Lugans who had done the survey. And before then, there were traders who were always trading around here. When that British East African IBA was formed and given the protectorate, at some point, they were not given funds by the government, and they were told to learn the operations from resources generated from Kenya. At some point, they were also confiscating livestock from Kikuyus in central Kenya. And that's when they came up with these poll tax, hard tax, all those things. All the Iyokunyanyaso yote. So resistance, reasons for resistance were all over. You are being forced to work. Like he says in 1908, is it 1902?
1908.
1908. The railway had already been constructed.
They reached Kisumu in
They
1901.
needed cheap labor in Rift Valley. So what did they do to Kikuyus in Nyeri Murang'a? Ship them at night.
Yeah.
Wasijue ujui inatoka wapi na wako wapi, so they
Where
came
they
down.
headed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were taken there by pretty much by force.
And could they be able to come back to their families, or that was the end?
How many?
How would they? They already dropped in Nakuru, others in Molo, others in Joro. As the train continued,
Yeah.
where actually then they had their own representative of the Legico. That was Lord Delamere. And Delamere was the chairman of the white, he was known as Kenya Front. That was the Wazungu's association. So he would know Lord Scott needed so many workers, Lord Cole needed so much workers, because he was the chairman of the settlers. So he knew those settlers who needed labor. So they would be taken there with the command of the government.
This is to me before the slavery started. There was no that.
No.
Slavery was abolished in 1809, 1808. 1808, yeah.
Official abolishment.
Yeah, Wilberforce. You didn't run in your school. It was there. Wilberforce. The one.
Now, my question now.
Yeah.
Who are the major personnel, these persons now, who started this liberation movement?
I'll put it this way. There were those elders, we can call them the founding fathers of the nation.
Yes.
There are 5 from Murang'a, 3 from Nyeri, and 1 from Kirinyaga.
Yes.
These were the elders now, the wazes, who came up and said, hey, come think of it. We are not educated. We need someone who can take these guys head on, who can speak their language and who can talk to them. Whom do we send huko Ulaya akatuwakilisha, akapeleke matakwa yetu to the king? That was then the queen or what? That was the king. That was the king. And they chose George Buter. They chose Buter.
Yes.
Was it
James Buter.
James.
James Buter?
James.
James Buter. Butoa
Waruhani.
Waruhani.
Eh.
So Buter is actually a corruption of Butoa Ruhani.
Yes.
They chose him. And they summoned him, and the guy had just been recently married. And he said, hey, guys, let's be honest. Nimepata bibi juzi. Siwezi acha familia.
Yes.
So they had to settle for someone else. No, they went hunting and said, hey, whoever meet a leader in Nairobi, who is also educated, anazungumza Kizungu, let's approach him. Kenyatta accepted. That's how Kenyatta was shipped to, by the KCA, is it, if I'm not wrong? Kwenda Ulaya. So meaning, the people who started this maneno of liberation were the actual wazes. But the people who actually went to the forest were not the wazes.
The people who had
They were these gentlemen.
Second
There-
World
there
War.
were two
They were
two
the wazes
groups.
Yeah.
were the guys organizing
The
everything.
level advisors.
Yes.
Yeah.
The planners.
The planners.
All those were wazes. But the guys who went to the forest were these young men.
They were
But then
young.
they
For
were,
now, we
they were
use
young,
the-
they were young people.
For now, we
Yeah.
use the word young men
Yeah.
Yes.
because they were even younger than I.
Yes.
They were in their 20s, between 17 years all the way maximum 30 years. I doubt majority of them had one child, maximum 2.
Do you think they believe from their forefathers, their level advisor, they believe in their parents that whatever a parent tells you,
No.
you can do it without question?
Yes.
Or
Like
what's
if we-
happening
yes.
at that time?
They saw it
Victor.
Yes.
immediately. Yeah, let me feel his doubt.
Yes.
Mzungu had already declared the poll tax. You know, the African naturally have kraals, had kraals, and therefore they would look, oh, there is a hut there, and then there are other small huts. So he would come to your place, or you have about 5 boys, and each has a kraal. Each has a hut.
Yes.
And therefore they would pay that tax. It is levied on them there.
To pay.
Yes. And if he doesn't pay, he's put in by the chiefs.
And then they get the goods.
And they get the goods. Yeah.
To compensate now that.
Compensate for the money.
It was very bad.
Yeah.
Very, very
No, it was not.
No, it was cruel. It was done with cruelty. Yes.
So
Also,
I think,
also,
what about- what
also
about,
the issue of young boys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also the issue of young boys.
Yeah.
In some instances, it's not that you are going for it freely. No.
Yeah.
There was a challenge. That's why you come in a bomber. You've got a young, or you've got a boy, you've got a young boy, who can hold the gun. Now you could measure with the gun without now looking for the age.
Yes.
Age was not a matter.
Hate.
It's not
He was equal to the gun.
If he's equal to the gun, because they were healthy, they were eating healthy food.
They were good.
And they were good. And they were good. They are not GMOs.
What about how do you interact with the British? Because these people, they came from our country, and in terms of challenges they face towards by the time they venture themselves in Kenya, and we find that we have chiefs, we have elders. The way
Before the chief, that
Yeah.
was also another ordinance
Yeah.
to appoint the chiefs. But the families and the clan had their leader, and each leader of the clan was chosen, and then another leader of another clan was chosen by the Mzungu, and then they were brought together as to be council of elders.
Okay, this is the way elders, the name elders come from.
Yes,
The
and the
indigenous of
the
elders.
indigenous of the elders
So
came from.
the indigenous of elders,
Yes.
they're selected by the British, or they're selected within the society, or within the
No.
area.
There are two systems here.
I told you about the two systems.
Yeah.
There's the Mzungu system.
Or the Mzungu system.
But the Africans, even to
Alright,
date, we
alright.
still have these 9 clans.
Okay.
And within those clans,
Okay.
each had a bomber.
All right.
And all the others, even us, we came from Muranga in 1903. We came to Dagoretti. We came through the clan. And we joined Paramount Chief Kenyan. But then, lucky enough, my great-grandfather was actually brought by a Mzungu to come to veterinary. When he came to veterinary, they are the people who started Kabete. And Kabete came from just a ring. And my own grandfather was the first employee, number 1, to start Kenya Veterinary. How did he know it? The Mzungu used to look ideas in the sense, can you catch up? When I want the cattle, they used to have certain symptoms. They would know the rinderpest. They would know the river coast. But then they themselves had already what we call needles. So my father, to get a job, he excelled in what I would call logics. He would look at the kind of needles he used for a cattle that is forming. The one which has a lot of mucus, it's called, he could tell. That's how he was employed. Not because he had gone to school. He had never gone to school.
Employment was not automatic.
No. What happened is that,
It was merit.
yes, later on, the British were fomenting war in 1908. They knew that they were going to fight the Germans in 1914. So, it is the same clans who were used to scout for the young men to go into war.
So, which means there is an interaction between
Yeah.
the Kenyan community and towards the British Wazungus. The interactions, the way they seduce they seduce the clans, they seduce society.
I will tell you how they did it.
Yeah, and
I will tell you what they
okay,
did it.
okay.
What they did, they were far intelligent, they were educated, that's for sure. Then they used the missionaries. The missionaries. And missionaries were a bit intelligent than the locals. So they did not go to the elder. They knew they would resist this God who dies. They were not after. If you tell them that Jesus is the God and he dies and resurrected, they wouldn't agree. So what they did was to scout for the young men, about 9 years, 10 years, who has cut himself, who has mucus coming out. He would call you the missionary. Mzungu used the missionary. And that's why Kenyatta used to say, he might be right, yes, we were told about the Bible, but we held the Bible and they took the land. Not really. The aim and purpose of the Mzungu was really colonizing Kenya.
Yes.
But he had to use the young men so as to indoctrinate them.
By enticing them.
Yes, by enticing them. One, they would be given what we call beads. You know, they were beautiful to look at. Then what they will do,
Yeah.
they will give you a string.
Yeah.
And then you are given seven beads. And the whole thing is not properly tied. So what they did, they knew 7 days. And if they come on Wednesday, Mzungu was knowing, if I have come to your farm, to your home, on Wednesday, Sunday is 3 days away. They will give you beard. So every day you remove one, then the next day you remove another one, and the third day you come, I add you more, so that they would be given 7. That's how the days came about. And because you are sick, you would come for the cough drops, you would come for injections. So they knew Mzungu has a power of treating. Are we together?
Yeah.
That is how the Mzungu enticed a lot of people
One thing-
into missionary.
I think
One
for
thing-
this one, I allow me to interject.
One thing.
Yeah.
We're a
Find that-
bit interject a bit.
Okay.
I want my interjecting on this is because remember they would want to know. That's why I'm always coming in.
Yeah.
Sorry for this. They would want to know. If you get sick, where do you get your
Help.
treatment? The missionaries. They would tell them, go to Ambogo. Ambogo, they would go for something more unique. This one I'm not going to elaborate further. They would go for Ambogo and they were on a challenge, on a family challenge. They would go to Gedaiga, somebody on Medaiga, a harbor, because that was commonly, before they came, we used to, herbal medicine was the common treatment. So those who would deal with the herbal treatment, they would be called people of Medaiga. There are those now who could now come up and say, oh, I've got this and this problem, and this problem, but the treatment is now to go to Okumu because you do this and say, the problem is here. I hope you understand.
I do.
And so, what happened is that if it is now Ambogo and he is doing this, he had that something he called Miano. There are a lot of resources for him to also...
True.
Switchcraft.
Yeah.
Switchcraft.
They would call it witchcraft, but even if you call it witchcraft, now that was a belief.
The tradition.
We had it as
It was
early as
working.
even in 70s. We had them in the
That's what I'm
homestead.
saying.
Like-
So what
Talking
happened?
in Miano.
So now what happened?
Talking in Miano.
Since I have a Miano
Yeah.
in my home,
Yeah.
and he is the father, now they would come and not know, hii Miano unatumiaga namna gani? How do you make use of this? How does it become effective? They did a learning, they had a learning process. They took data. And as they were taking data, now they made it as a cultural value.
Okay.
When they took it now as a cultural value, they had now to go deeper into it on indigenous cultural values, which bound those people together, or as related now to a community or a society.
Okay.
That's how it came.
Thank you. Labda nirejelee swali ambalo tumeongelea kwa kifupi kuhusiana na swala la associations. Tumesema ilianza na Kikuyu Central Association pia ikakuja the East Africa Association,
KAU was early.
and the rest. Now niulize, kulienda vipi hadi tukaweza kufuata ya kwamba hizi association zote zimeweza kuja pamoja na kuweza kushikana ili waweze kupigania uhuru wa taifa?
Wakati wa kupigania uhuru tulikuwa tu tunataka kupigana uhuru, mzungu aondoke. Hiyo ndio kitu ya kwanza. Hii mambo ya kusema hii ni chama hii au iko chama namna hii zilikuwa hapo mbeleni na wazee ambao walikuwa viongozi, kina Kenyatta nini hawa kina Jesse Kariuki, huko ndio walikuwa na hiyo vyama. Lakini sisi tulipopigana uhuru na kumalizana na mzungu, ndio tukakuja kwetu sisi tukaanza kujipanga, ili kwa sababu uhuru sasa umekaribia, tukaanza kujipanga. Wanajua tulikuwa huko msituni tukakaa miaka ile tulikaa. Baada ya kumaliza mambo ya uhuru ya msituni na kupigana na mzungu alilazimika kuachilia uhuru wetu. Kwa hivyo tukaunda vyama vya kuunganisha watu ambao walikuwa wakipigania uhuru. Ndio tukapanga mambo ya Mau Veteran Association na nini, na hiyo unasikia Mr. Wambugu akisema ya kwamba Mau Abrera namna hiyo.
Okay.
Kwa hivyo hiyo sio kabla, ni baada ndio tulitengeneza. Kwa hivyo tukaona, ili kwa sababu kuna mahitaji ambayo yalikuwako, kwa sababu tulikuwa tukihitaji mashamba, uhuru tumepata, lakini mashamba hatujapata. Kwa hivyo tukapanga mambo ya kujiunga pamoja ili tuendelee kungoja na kuclaim ile tunastahili kuwa nayo, kwa sababu uhuru tumepata, lakini mashamba bado na compensation ni lazima na mzungu compensate.
If I got your question right, what you would have wanted was, in the fight, ni vyama ngapi zilipigania maneno?
Yeah, after the
over and above Mau who were in Central, there were guys in all the way from Taita Taveta. They had a name,
whatever.
Yes, they had names. Everyone was doing their part. Yes, exactly.
Kulikuwa vyama hiyo
mingi. All those guys were doing their part. Among the Kikuyus, majority are those who went for the forest. Because Makiu, when you heard about the poll tax and the hard tax, there was forceful conscription of young men and women into war.
Yes.
So majority of them tupwe bamad by force, waingia msitu kupigania huko. That's when the physical war kwenda bush ilianzia. When the young men walikubali yenyewe, if ukilandarata mtaa unabebwa nenda usigeni.
Okay.
Maybe kuna kitu muhimu wazungu waliona, ndio maana walikubali, hapana, hapa ni moto, wacha tuachie hii kitu. Maybe kuna kitu waliona secretly that sijui kama walionyesha, walisema hiyo kitu ama hawakusema hiyo kitu, ndio maana wakasema.
Victor, in 1954-55 there was bara ya hapa Kandara. That was pretty much the final battle. The final battle when General Kago died. That's when the Mzungu actually declared, the commander then declared that we are fighting a losing war. This attempt of us of using guns on Mau haitupeleke mahali. They said a Mau in the forest is a needle in a haystack. Ni very ngumu kupata. But I know they were fighting a new Mau.
Gorilla war.
The Mau in the village. Whom everyone can be a Mau. And so it was a needle in a stack of needles. Wakaona hii ni ngumu. What do we do? In 1954-55, they started now getting allies from North Kenya. Wakaanza kuchukua the leading lights from the home guards. Wenye, as they prepared to exit, because they knew this is not ending well. The casualties on the end were just massive. They were using like, is it 10,000 pounds to kill one man? By their figures. You can dispute
So
it.
they were aware they were to exit.
Yes, and it was too costly. the battle was becoming too costly. First of all, you have to appreciate that they brought in like a battalion from Egypt. Those guys were used to clear line of sight. It's a desert. They come here, Aberdare Forest, unaona tu hapa mbele yako. And yet, the likes of these gentlemen here, ako tu hapo na kuangalia unampita, mnapita. Are you getting? And they have their way of communicating that mimics wild animals. So you can't tell whether that's a tik ama ni Mau wameambia wengine wameingia wote tuvamia. So casualties on the end was like I'm told the Egyptians, the guys came from Egypt.
Yes.
Most of them were wiped out because they were used to desert warfare.
They were Fusilia
Yes,
from Egypt.
majority of them were wiped out.
Yeah.
And that's why they resorted to carpet bombing. But even that one became too expensive. I mean, you can talk of like for you to be able to kill one Mau, you spend like $10,000, £10,000 then.
But also
It was quite expensive.
It was too expensive, so they had to do an exit. That's why Victor said, Nini waliona. It was too expensive and they still wanted to retain this country. Ikuwe kwa mikono yao, lakini officially iko kwa mikono yenu. They still succeeded in doing that.
So chip in before I go to Mr.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas I am interjecting on this one,
Yes.
I would want to be very sincere and candid on this one. Even you, Mau came also with another strategy.
Yes.
Of the settlers. They could target settlers. And the moment they target the settlers, who are vocal and who are known in Europe, who could communicate directly from Europe, they could go for Joe. Let's say Joe is Colonial Scott, and he was a very senior in the army. And he's got a ranch in Naivasha, or in Kidawa, or in Nakuru, or in Naivasha, or even in Nyandarua. The moment they target Colonel Njogu there, they had to make sure his head is displayed, that Njogu is no more. So in a week or in a month, they could target about 4 or 10. And they were the key. And even some could know that this one came from the Queen. And even here he was brought. They could have that history of how did you come from Europe and now you are here, how you acquired the land there. So there was data, and that cooperation was in existence and communication. The Bushman strategy was working. Bushman strategy was, how was it working? Is that hii mzungu nafanyia kazi, alitoka mahali fulani, anafanyaga mahali fulani, ni wa jamii ama ukoo wa jamii fulani. So the moment they know that this is one from that family and they target you, they had to make sure that head is displayed. So when you are saying that, when you are talking about now values, and you have seen and you are in Europe, the first thing they had to put pressure to the governor. Sure.
People.
It is true,
Wataisha.
but the fact is,
a
a majority
amongst
of the
fighters.
people who are fighting had come from the Second World War. Because this thing started in 1952, and that is immediately after the Second World War. These people knew, because they were conscripted by the British. And those land, actually most of the White Highland, were a gift by the British government. Instead of paying you a pension,
Yes.
they give you land. And most of them would come in with their rank. They would say, this is general. This is a general, this is a colonel, this is a brigadier. The people already in them, they know who is higher in rank. So they would go for those big, with the big names. But they knew about Lord Delamere.
Yes.
What Delamere did was to befriend the Africans so that he can get more labor.
Yes.
But you see, he had come from the from the Queen's lineage. So they knew there is a protection for him. They would go for colonels, for majors, for captain. They would go for those people with ranks, those Wazungu who had rank. And before even they went to the war, there is something you don't know. They knew that the religion was part of colonization. So the first one they killed was the son of Louis, who formed the Kenya Museum, was hanged and buried on the top of Mount Kenya.
So,
So that,
So that
to
it's-
send a signal, we have started the war. And also Christians are part of war of, I would call it attrition, because they were helping the Christian, most of them became corroborators. That's why we used to call them home guards and corroborators.
also
Yeah.
to add on this,
Yeah.
is that they had to create a stigma and remove that mindset that Mzungu is like God, he can't die. So now you from Burma, the Burma guys and those in the First and Second World War, they could say, you could do this and he could die. Now that misconception or perception that Mzungu cannot die,
The myth.
the myth.
Have been busted.
Thank you. Now, finally, I've seen Mr. Okumu has not talked for a while.
Yes.
Mr. Okumu would like to understand what is the importance, majorly looking at your work, what you does here at the Kenya National Archives, doing that storage of monuments, keeping the records of what happened in the historic nature, what is happening currently for the future generations. What is the major important for these monuments that you keep here at the Kenya National Archives?
Yes, monuments are outside.
Yes.
And here we just have the records on Mau.
I've seen some of the,
Yes, we have got the area of the struggle of independence.
yes,
But just a quick one, it's important to keep history of a country, particularly where people struggled. And I'm even happy the current deputy president is a son of Mau Mau, and he usually says that the interest must be kept. So if you see a statue of Didan Kimathi Washiuri, or at the archives we have got the area of the struggle of independence.
yes.
That one tells you how it is important for these issues to be kept for future generation and posterity. Because if information is not kept properly about that, or monuments, for example, you have got monument of Didan Kimathi who was a field marshal, it must be protected, and Kenyans must know the importance of keeping monuments of such heroes. They are called fighters, the people fight for us. So it is important that way to make sure that heritage, for example, maybe I can chip in something small.
Yes.
You see the statue of Didan Kimathi,
Yes.
it has been put strategically on Kimathi Street. If statue are not put, definitely then you cannot know that even the current leaders, for example, Tombo is a CS, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, and if you did not have a statue put there as a cabinet secretary for planning economic and development in 60s, then the current generation cannot be able to know. You can compare with the current cabinet secretaries, then you can be able to make a choice or an inspiration that it is important to have good leadership.
If we need to give it that much credible importance, why is it that the discussion and the topics concerning the Mau Mau, the freedom fighters, is not being highlighted in this country? Why is it so? And yet you have the status everywhere.
Yes, this, as Secretary General usually tells me,
Yes.
that this issue should not only be done in Nairobi here.
Yes.
You see, when you talk about national heroes, you find statues in Nairobi, but they are supposed to spread in all 47 counties. Just the way Kapengura 6 left Kapenguria, then you could have the statues of 6 men, isn't it? Not of one person. So it is important for this information to be spread, because Mau Mau, I understand, was an issue, even though it was concentrated in central part of Kenya, but there were other interested parties across the world, across the country. That's why it is important to spread this information about, because we struggled. If we struggled, we struggled, and the history about struggling must be kept properly. So the institutions that are in charge of keeping and maintenance of that, they are supposed to be enhanced to make sure, if it is National Museums of Kenya in charge of national monuments, because of their inspiration. If we don't keep them like that, the future generation will never know whether we fought, we struggled. They think this freedom they are getting is from the chairman.
Yes.
So they can be living knowing that this freedom we have now, if we got it free from our forefathers, let us protect it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are going for a short break, and I would like you to continue thinking about the freedom fighters of this country and how they struggled to fight. And when we coming back, we shall be measuring a little bit on the Kapenguria 6 to understand the kind of torture, the kind of suffering they went through at the hands of the British and the colonial masters, and how they came out of the jails, and how they were able to liberate the country finally. That will what we shall be discussing when we come back. But for now, we are going for a very short commercial break. Stay tuned as we come back. Thank you.